My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system, which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California.
All right, bathroom monitoring is underway at, again, what is a senior citizen complex. So not only is this the pattern of conduct and all what is readily in the what is already established specific environment, it's happening at what is, I'm also showing an uncharacteristic environment with regard to the P.O.C. that demons engage in, including in bathrooms. So at 6 a.m. in the dark is engineer light in the living room, speaking to the setting where amplified noise is happening in a bathroom while I am, again, physically indisposed and in a private space engaging in private activity, which is public information, and that is also relevant to the amplified noise that's being heard in the bathroom room inside of the apartment. Where monitoring in a bathroom is happening at 6:50 in the morning, where a bunch of old people are not sleeping, where you're going to the bathroom and it's a matter of surveillance. It's also a matter of what is the maintenance of a specific environment, and literally the fruitless endeavor to engage in such a method of gang stalking where sex offenders anticipate being documented, where those that have no future outside of a federal facility engage in such acts of sexual violence because of their mental illness, because of their acts of desperation, as it makes no sense to even have that level of noise happening inside of a bathroom at a senior citizen complex where old people are supposedly asleep. Well, you would assume that they would be asleep, especially at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that there's nothing that you're doing on your walker with your edema-filled ankles, when you're walking around getting your blood pressure medication, when you're looking for your medical worker that lives with you, who you need to help you get in and out of your room. There's nothing that you're doing that's creating any amplified booming in any part of the apartment, especially that's not going to be disruptive and heard in any other apartment next to you. This is where demons are desperately and in a frenzied nature pacing in and out of the living room and the bedroom, and light activity that is impossible to occur on the east living room wall in the dark before the fake sun rises, and where they're creating light activity by turning lights on inside of the apartment and pacing back and forth and deciding, oh, this is the moment where I'm going to empty all the garbage and put all the garbage in one place, which is beside me, pacing in and out. It's like having groceries and walking around in the kitchen, which is pacing and engineered light, where you're looking at the elements of monitoring underway. This is how you're also monitoring while evidence is being created on a communication device in a specific environment after having been documented for engaging in what are the elements of monitoring in a private space where sex offenders engage in gang stalking. Sex offenders that are over 55 years old and cannot pay their rent outside of government assistance, gang stalking in bathrooms. That includes the defendant in unit number 55, where the evidence already shows that not only the demon with license 5WB715, but every historic gang stalker in that same unit has employed the same methods of stalking in the path and stalking with amplified noise in concert with the same sex offender that resides in my line of vision, gang stalking, which is a terrorizing threat. Also because of the ability to know that gang stalker's name and the relationship which the government relies on with regard to being a hitman, with regard to threatening your life, with regard to sexually threatening you, violating you. That's why they go to places like prison and mental asylums. It's the same entity, gang stalking with your relatives, and then doing so and having a very short memory regarding the same pattern of conduct being underway in nothing other than a different area in the same apartment, which is the same specific environment at the same facilitating venue, and doing so in a manner which is also, again, very obvious with regard to what is being heard inside of the ceilings and walls in a bathroom at a senior citizen apartment complex at 6 something in the morning. But it's the same amplified noise that's happening while the fake sun is still at this same exact apartment after 4 o'clock in the evening, where engineered light covers the same east living room wall in a manner that is impossible to occur, and amplified noise is heard inside of a bathroom where the same demons over 55 with no jobs obsessively gang stalking one person and monitoring the genitalia of a woman whom they're stalking in the bathroom at the same exact environment, all right, in the same exact manner. This is the P.O.C, and this is documentation of AVANATH engaging in what is the sex offense, the perpetual sex offense. While it's gang stalking employees, it's gang stalking residents who are the people of the state, who are its co-defendants, are engaging in exhibiting severe obsession while they're gang stalking while aware of the fact that evidence is being collected against it, which is the government. And it's also an impermissible threat. It's also entirely sexually demented and perverted, all right? It's irrational, and it's also incestuous with regard to the defendants engaging in bathroom monitoring. You will see in the images the elements of relevant positioning inside of the apartment. That is the same demon that's gang stalking with Eric Spencer on the phone last night. And again, today is April 18, 2025. She's now gang stalking in the same manner, absent a communication device in her hand. She's gang stalking with relevant positioning, amplified audible activity, and light activity, the same elements of monitoring underway, while I am indisposed, which she is aware of and is obsessed with my genitalia being exposed in the bathroom, okay? And also Eric Spencer is engaged in that pattern of conduct as well. Okay, so this is the entity that is acting as one. It's not based on your place of residence around me as somebody that is being targeted by the state. I am documenting those that are living in relevant position. That's why those particular defendants are going to prison and mental asylums. People like Eric Spencer, who doesn't have to live at the venue, is going to prison for gang stalking as one that is maintaining a level of intolerable facilitation, analogous to intolerable facilitation, whereby you are living in relevant position, gang stalking, like the demons in units 33 through 64, who are all subject to prison and mental asylums. Eric Spencer is gang stalking and engaged in bathroom monitoring as I'm documenting it. You heard him gang stalking using a communication device last night, still engaging in that same exact P.O.C. Gang stalking a relative in a bathroom is an incestuous manner of sexually violating the target individual. It's also demented. It's speaking to what are the works of the demon possessed, however. You're dealing with a spirit that is sexually perverted, that uses those whose name you know and who are related to you. You're going to prosecute for that, but you're breaking down that demonic activity as well. And that is also understanding things that perhaps a normal person cannot comprehend, such as your relatives or your friends. If not, you could probably more readily ascertain the notion of quote unquote friends gang stalking. This is activity annihilate. That's activity annihilate. That's, again, multiple personality disorders, a psychopath that is obsessively monitoring, not concerned about emptying the trash, okay? And is very psychopathic. You've heard the same thing. What's the audible activity creation right now? Ruffling the trash. It's noise and engineered light and presence. On April 7th and April 14th, the audible activity is screaming out criminally defamatory language while on a communication device, and pacing is still underway in the same exact engineered light. So understand, it's nothing other than monitoring me. The obsession with me is already proven by the supernatural environment that not only fills her apartment, but remains at the apartment complex where she is gang stalking with a whole population that is equally obsessed, and that is entirely demonic. And this is evidence that is proven supporting that. Nothing that I'm stating is unsupported. And it's also that which is pointing to a very severely demented mind state, not only gang stalking in the first place, but still doing so when you are being exposed for it. That's why the defendant's going to a mental asylum, okay? And gang stalking with relatives like Eric Spencer, that's why he's going to federal prison. That's the impunity. Gang stalking with a whole population while my panties are down in a bathroom, that's why they're going to federal prison in units 33 through 64, and the AVANATH employees are also subject to prison. Okay, but nonetheless, those that are not capable of readily understanding the notion or accepting the notion of a quote-unquote oxymoron, such as a gang stalking mother, it's based on demon possession. I'm exposing public corruption, criminal conduct by government, and you need to understand the context with regard to the specific environment where gang stalking is understood to be underway. It's proven. The fake son that sits all day over one apartment is where gang stalking is underway. Okay, the fake son is supposed to be an environment that you're never questioning, and everybody's walking around and driving around and living and existing in a natural environment where the sun rises and sets. But upon examination and basic level of attention, you will see that that sun never goes anywhere, and you will see that that light that's covering everything is not natural light, and you will understand the significance of what is pacing, not merely presence, and that is satanic, and it's also delusional, psychotic behavior that is focused on one person. And it's a very unpersuasive stage, if you will, where a bunch of poor actors are doing nothing other than one thing, stalking and monitoring one person, and demons are monitoring. This happens to be government conduct, as the evidence also shows. Meaning the evidence doesn't just exist in Ontario, amongst the Ontario Police, amongst Paul Leon's City of Ontario, amongst the entity and at Woodside Senior Apartments. LAPD has confirmed what is going on in Ontario, California. The city of Los Angeles, Alvarado Gardens, the specific environment where I'm in an entirely different region, including in another state where I'm documenting the sunrise in Las Vegas, Nevada, at the same exact time. This is evidence that's already on the record, everything that I'm referring to, if you're not aware of it, meaning the pre-existing specific environment is speaking to nothing other than the crime scene, where a gang stalking mother, in fact, is shown to be a delusional psychopath who's creating noise in the background because she's monitoring evidence and is showing her obsession with me. Her obsession is that which requires medical attention. Okay, her obsession with me is a threat to my life, and all of her audible activity poses a threat to me and my liberty. Okay, that is an unlawful threat, albeit an unsuccessful one, but this is how an entity is gang stalking. In the ways in which I've shown, engaging in criminal defamation, engaging what is gang stalking in places like bathrooms, which is entirely perverted and sick, engaging in what is psychological torture, being a witch and practicing witchcraft, in other words, stalking and monitoring somebody in the spirit, and then gang stalking them in relevant position. That's what the demon possessed, including the defendant inside of this apartment, is engaging in at the same time. Very, very sick and demented. And her co-defendants are gang stalking in a bathroom as well. All of those sex offenders are going to prison, including license 5WB715. And the evidence of gang stalking at Woodside Senior Apartments long precedes 2025 and 2024. I'm documenting amplified noise and the methods of light appearing supernaturally inside of the apartment, which you will see that is evolved and progressed since 2020, 2019, 2020, 2019, 2020, is that I have evidence, substantial evidence, speaking to the methods of stalking with impossible light and the ways in which the entity has provided, as opposed to video evidence inside of the apartment when I'm narrating it, versus where I have video evidence that has shown you impossible light shooting across the kitchen cabinets inside of the apartment. That's exactly what I was talking about in 2020. That's what I was talking about in 2019. So that's the only difference, but it has not changed with regard to the evidence of what is the environment. We're monitoring, surveillance, and stalking. That's what they're doing in the bathroom. That's what they're doing in every bathroom at every venue where I'm documenting. This is just where I'm residing. That's why AVANATH is going to be prosecuted based on the nature of the venue. But this is sexual violence that's built into what the government is doing everywhere that you're going. Okay, amongst demons whom you do not know, and those who you are acquainted with, because you don't actually know the demons that you think that you know, because you don't know that they're gang stalking. You don't know that they're obsessed with your genitalia. You don't know that they are maintaining a secret level of malice and hostility and animosity towards you. You don't know that they're actually rooting for your demise. And the awareness of what the government is doing and who the government relies on, that's the people of the state. The people of the state are very much in your bloodline. They're in your social circle. They're at your community church. They're at your school. They're on the freeway. They're at the gym. They're at the grocery store. They're at the nearby Starbucks, which I've documented all of the above, by the way. The entity is engaging in gang stalking in bathrooms, and it is the prosecution for the perpetual sex offense. And what you heard in the background is activity creation by a sex offender that is more obsessed with me and my genitalia than aware of the fact and accepting reality that she's going to sit in a mental asylum for the rest of her life for this very conduct, and much, much more. Much, much more. It is currently April 18, 2025. at it's 7:06 a.m. and the images will show the engineered light. It's like a blue tinted grayish color on the east living room wall. That's light that has nothing to do with the cloudy state outside. That's creating light that's so concentrated it's appearing in some sort of thick bar of light that's on the floor rising up the wall. That's engineered light. It's a supernatural occurrence. And it's there at all hours of the day, by the way. And it is speaking to what is light in the presence in that environment is accomplishing surveillance where activity is created. Activity is easily created by using your device and engaging in a conversation. Activity is created by walking throughout the apartment. Activity is created when that sort of activity is amplified in volume. Activity is created both inside and outside of that space where that engineer light is present. Activity is created when you are maintaining things like putting groceries away in the kitchen cabinets, like emptying the trash inside of the bag like you hear. It's all activity. So you're thinking with regard to understanding the P.O.C. of demons that are monitoring and stalking. You're stalking when you're monitoring someone. You're not engaged in any private activity or minding your business. You're not ignorant about what's going on with regard to the target individual when you're monitoring. Monitoring is proven by engineered light. Monitoring is proven under a fake sun. Monitoring is proven in concert with the government that is conclusively proven to be stalking as well. They're stalking in that same specific environment. You're not minding your business. You are, in other words, an obvious stalker and a demented one. Now, the mental health patients inside of this building, units 48 through 64, they're going to prison and mental asylums because of their obsession with my genitalia. All of them together, and that is always proven when I'm walking outside and getting video of my multiple shadows on the sidewalk, my upright shadows appearing above my head on the outside of the building, the fake sun that's still at the same apartment complex after I'm capturing the sunrise on any day, let alone within recent days, and also juxtaposing that with the environment at the same time of year on the same day, even down to the same time in Los Angeles, California, where the government is also engaged in harassing conduct in that environment that is monitoring gang stalking in an environment that is irreconcilable. This is why the defendants that are right now currently at 7:08 a.m. amplifying noise, the demon that was gang stalking in the bathroom above me is gang stalking with amplified noise in the living room. Over 55, not sleep, okay? Not taking their medication and sleeping like an old person should be, up before the sun is never taking a rest. That energy is because they're demon possessed. It is that which is uncharacteristic of their age. It's also uncharacteristic of the way that they want you to see them on camera. Amplified noise is not based on the fact that you're crawling around on a walker outside under the fake sun. It is the amplified noise, which is supernatural, is as supernatural as the sun being at the same apartment from 7:20 until 6:18 p.m. Okay, that's as supernatural as the entity engaging in what is amplifying noise of some sort of creating any sort of impact. Activity, light activity, relevant positioning, and gang stalking with her co-defendant in Unit 55. That's the demon Tracy Banks, license 9HUZ740. That's a sex offender, and she's going to be locked up for this impunity. The entity is gang stalking in this manner, and the elements of monitoring are what control, and this is a psychopath that is demon possessed. So you need to understand the inability to appreciate the criminality, not because they don't understand it, but because they are more concerned with harming another person than concerned with the consequences for even being caught doing so. This is somebody that is monitoring in their own apartment, and it's state action. It's pointing directly to what is the necessity of removing the mayor in the city from office, who is gang stalking with the police department that she's threatening to summon every week. When you are minding your business, and I am every bit the focus of everything that she is doing, which is achieving the elements of monitoring. A psychopath is hostile to that. A psychopath is seething, is enraged by that, while their sexual violence, while their criminal activity is being exposed. Okay, so this is a demon that's pacing in the bathroom and pacing from the bedroom to the living room, monitoring in the apartment, pacing with the demon above me while I'm on the couch in the living room. And as you have seen the images of the 600 square feet apartments, very small boxes that these elderly people are remaining in, where they are pacing above me and pacing in front, crossing path repeatedly. They're pacing all together. This is patrolling while a demon is on the same level inside of the apartment. Remember, this is the analysis just inside, because they're in traffic, they're in the sky space, they're on the property grounds outside, pacing around as well, okay? In the apartment and above the apartment, 55, 52, 56, you have 54 that is in the immediate environment, and none of them individually are powerful enough to create amplified booming through the walls and through the ceilings, and doing so not coincidentally but pursuant to a pattern of conduct following from the bathroom, now in the living room. This is where the demon is ruffling the trash bag and emptying it. She's monitoring. And this is somebody that salivates over her daughter's genitalia. This is a sex offender. Okay, this is somebody that is monitoring with her son. That's what you heard. He's going to prison. Okay, Eric Spencer, he's gang stalking right now. He was gang stalking explicitly with his mother on the phone, the same psychopath in the bathroom. Bathroom monitoring today. She's gang stalking with Eric Spencer. She's gang stalking with Woodside Senior Apartments right now, engaging in the elements of monitoring. It's not different when you're just including a communication device as the method of audible noise, okay? The demon always needs something to share in the elements of monitoring while she's pacing around. All right, it is currently, again, 7:12 a.m. This is AVANATH engaging in what is not only psychological torture, but sexually violent methods of monitoring someone, monitoring in a bathroom of the apartments where occupants rely, and you're profiting from that at a apartment complex where you are the property manager. That is, again, relevant to the damages, the unprecedented level of damages that a commercial actor like the gang stalker AVANATH Capital Management, in the same way that Speaker Companies is in Los Angeles at Alvarado Gardens, in concert with the people of the state, when I'm documenting this P.O.C, where I'm living and residing, where I'm residing and working in LA, okay? This is an entity that's engaging in that. And then also the exacerbating factors, all the audible activity that's come out of the mouth of demons who gang stalk you on the job and then claim that first of all, you lost your license. These are the foolish statements that came, it's audible activity. And you lost your law license. You can never lose your education. You don't lose your license. If you're being gang stalked on the job, by the way, and the entity is, in other words, interfering with your liberty right to maintain employment outside of psychological torture and terrorism, that is interfering with the financial ability to pay your legal fees. That is, again, the hollow victory of jealous and envious demons who have no more than a high school degree, who are gang stalking their children, whom they want to be and could never be, and gang stalk them, and then create audible activity pertaining to your inability to work. And all of those are false and malicious statements proven by evidence, as opposed to what are, again, the vacuous words, but those words have legal significance, especially when you're gang stalking like she is on April 18, 2025. And no one is forgetting about all of the audible activity that the demons are creating on an ongoing basis while doing things that are entirely demented, like monitoring someone in a bathroom when they're engaged in private activity. What is the government, let alone what is that neighborhood, community, those neighbors interested in what's going on in the bathroom for? Engaging in what are acts of quote unquote retaliation. What exactly are you retaliating, and what is the purpose? What is the substance of that so-called retaliation when you engage in the elements of monitoring in a bathroom where you're stalking a woman in that private space? What is it exactly that you are being satiated in? What in you is being satisfied by being documented as a sex offender? This is what is being exposed. This is what's being exposed and addressed when the entity engages in amplified noise in the bathroom, monitoring in a bathroom with a defendant who is expecting an unsuccessful trial, and she's going to a mental asylum, and so are the defendants at Woodside. This is, in other words, an entity that already knows it's exposed, already knows about the evidence, and is aware of what is coming, but does not fully understand everything that's encompassed within their inevitable demise. This is where you have psychopaths engage in what is harmful to their own interests, harmful to the property management company, harmful to the property management employees, harmful to the defendants in the residing units 33 through 64, harmful to the entire apartment complex, all 144 units, who are all losing their apartment homes. None of them are remaining qualified for housing benefits, which they require, while they're both gang stalking and violating federal law that already exists, Violence Against Women Act. Monitoring in a bathroom, gang stalking a woman in a bathroom, sexually violating a woman and invading her privacy while you're stalking as a means of residence is more than sufficient with regard to violating the Violence Against Women Act under 34 U.S.C. section 12291. It is also that which is going to be used to prosecute AVANATH, who shall not participate in government programs providing housing benefits to gang stalkers, and also what is prosecution under laws to be enforced, such as the existing Title 18 federal stalking statute and legislation designed to prosecute domestic terrorism and psychological torture where gang stalking is underway. This is what they, again, unintelligent and lacking the depth of recognition of what the entity that is demon possessed. These are demons that are just going about. Demons pace. Demons stalk. Demons do not use reasoning skills. Demons do not exercise logic. Demons are not intelligent in what they do. Demons literally engage in the bare bones elements of monitoring. That is, again, a very high cost with regard to gang stalking in the ways in which you're going to legally analyze and prosecute under laws that exist and shall come into existence. Okay, so understand that that's going to, that impunity, in other words, that's what I'm stating, when you're understanding both demonic activity and then you're also prosecuting it and you're legally analyzing the stalker and everything that the stalker does, everything that the stalker said while it kept doing what it was doing, which is entirely unlawful and malicious. All right, the stalker is very unintelligent. The stalker is only obsessed. That's it. The stalker is demon possessed in a very obvious environment, accomplishing what is a corporate criminal act on behalf of the state. Okay, and so this is where you're legally analyzing the mentally ill. The entity is engaging in a P.O.C. with ongoing impunity at 7:17 a.m. Amplified sound of the ceiling cracking while the demon in Unit 55 is pacing, and so is this demon in Unit 51 inside of her bedroom in a frenzied state. The more that I document, the more excited the demons become, the more elaborate the activity creation, the light activity in the ways that you've seen on video, which is directly relevant to everything that's happening now. Proven you're not interested at any point in anything other than monitoring the person who's documenting and prosecuting you. And so are the elderly neighbors who are all being removed from the apartment homes where they're abusing government assistance for gang stalking purposes. And they do so with regard to their severe mental illness. And in real time, while I make that statement, amplified sound of the ceiling cracking, which I've documented on podcast and in video, of the same, again, demon that's over 55 in Unit in Unit 55 with license 5WB715. And where's the amplified cracking ceiling heard? Right over me in the living room where I'm positioned, where engineer light is on the east living room wall, and where the demon is moments earlier when my panties are down. This is where a sex offender is also stalking with amplified noises, where old people are remaining, and the apartment building sounds like bombs are detonating. These are old people that are not sleeping. These are old people that are not ignorant about the engineer light that does all manner of gymnastics. They're not ignorant about that either. These are gang stalkers, okay? And gang stalkers are violent sex offenders, and they're delusional psychopaths that, on the one hand, very short-minded, very short span of memory. When you document them one day and they conduct themselves as though nothing happened the previous day, though nothing was documented, though nothing was said out of their face, and persist in that manner. Again, that passive aggressive and delusional behavior is relevant to their diagnosis for, and there is correct, because you are able to categorize a population that's engaging in the identical pattern of conduct in an environment that is for that ongoing malicious and perverted and psychopathic purpose of gang stalking. That decision making, that criminal conduct, which is focused on one person, while the entity is being in my circumstance, documented for it in order to prosecute it, that is serving for what is necessary. The mental health patient in Unit 55, stalking with amplified noise, monitoring evidence with the mental health patient, Tracy Banks, who is gang stalking, as you see, on a routine basis with the people of the state. She needs to have them on the phone. She needs to have them pacing around in the surrounding apartments. She needs to have them pacing around in helicopters and amplified plane activity. She needs to have them pacing around in engineered light that shoots inside of her apartment. She is acting with the entity, and she's going to be locked up with that entity. Okay, pacing is that which is engaged in by somebody that is mentally ill, and that mental illness is no longer hidden when their behavior is manifesting it. It's also accomplishing patrolling. A demon in engineered light, creating audible activity and light activity. It's monitoring, and it is a person that is demon possessed whose behavior is actually exhibiting what is understood as actual mental illness conditions. The mental health patients, those in need of that sort of attention, in Units 55 and 51, are again co-defendants of the same one, Tracy Banks, who you hear gang stalking on an ongoing basis, using her communication device, using her own face, her own mouth to damn herself and damn her co-defendants that are gang stalking with her, all sharing in the same exact pattern of conduct in the specific environment, in the pre-prescribed manners. It's a very identical code of conduct that follows everywhere that I go. That's how you have strangers engaging in the same behaviors. That's how you have the defendants in the same same apartment engaging in the same level of gang stalking tactics. Not all of them are weighing 600 pounds, cracking the ceiling. Not all of them are ignorant and just coincidentally acting with the police department who likes to use helicopters over the apartment building. Not all of them are ignorant with regard to acting in sync with light that flies across the ceiling and all over, appearing and disappearing on the walls and on the floors and moving about. They're not ignorant about that. Neither is every other pre-existing demon co-defendant inside of Unit 55. None of them. They've all engaged in the same POC as the history of at Woodside has documented. I've documented that. A history of mental health patients, demons, gang stalking in that apartment. And that's what she's doing now. She's the same one seen under the fake sun with the Ontario police, pacing with that malice, or you see her walking from her apartment into the parking lot, and Ontario PD is flying in the sky space, engaging that level of captured malice that's sitting on the record. That's also, again, intentional conduct, where the entity is engaging in that in conformity to a long existing pattern of conduct of a gang stalking mother who hates her daughter, who she wants to murder. She's gang stalking, psychologically torturing. Those are the co-defendants that are acting as one. She's on video a plethora of times gang stalking, walking under the same on the same sidewalk under the fake sun in the morning, in the afternoon, and it remains into the evening, even reflecting off of her vehicle on the driver's side after 5 o'clock in the evening, where Amazon is on the grounds gang stalking. I'm referencing multiple videos at the same time with regard to the totality of circumstances where you're prosecuting the gang stalking neighborhood. Okay, the entity is doing so, again, that level of what's supposed to appear as being nonchalant and ignorant. This is somebody that is delusional and is indeed a psychopath. And her contrary to what is a failed outward demonstration of being nonchalant, that is monitoring the evidence in real time obsessively, that is both the demon of 55 and the demon Tracy Banks inside of this apartment, the evidence speaking to having sex with people in my peer circle, because that's the closest that she can get to having sex with me, I suppose, people that she surmises I'm interested in, people that are interested in me, people who she's stalking, trying to stalk into some sort of personal relationship with her, people that she wants to deny having any relationship with. That's showing the actual focus and obsession and concealed hostility that the defendant Tracy Banks has with me, engaging what is gang stalking me with government actors who have engaged in kidnapping along with her. That's showing the hostility and the true obsession with me that Tracy Banks has as a matter of record, engaging in what is obvious acts of criminal defamation, where nothing about this body of evidence and nothing in my history is speaking to anything remotely close that would support any sort of secret means of obtaining what are devices whereby you're controlling any property that belongs to me, you're controlling any details, which is not actually happening in reality, especially while the demons are gang stalking and the demon begins like she's throwing her body on the ground because they're fearful of the words that I'm speaking. That's audible noise, while again, the demon Tracy Banks is obsessively consumed with me. Her co-defendants demonstrate that. Her documented criminal conduct in the courts, which are ongoing acts of collateral harms, where there is no such mental illness on my part. Contrary to that, the mentally ill mental health patient, the mentally ill person that is gang stalking, right now, while her co-defendant sounds like she's rolling her body on the living room floor, Tracy Banks's mental illness is exhibited in that. Okay, that is the P.O.C, the elements of monitoring. While the more evidence that I speak to right now, the louder the amplified noise gets. Those are the co-defendants that are gang stalking together. And that's what they were doing while they get excited because my panties are down. Those are sex offenders. Okay, monitoring together in an environment that is irreconcilable, direct evidence of what is actual obsession, not your failed and unpersuasive outward demeanor of being disinterested and even ignorant and nonchalant. That's a psychopath's behavior, when everything you're doing is accomplishing the monitoring elements at the same time. This is when you're getting through, again, the illusions of demons. Okay, pacing in engineer light, pacing with the demon over 55 years old who's engaging what is like bowling activity inside of her apartment is directly relevant to the mental illness of Tracy Banks, who's monitoring her daughter's genitalia, that she is heavily engaged in targeting and evidence that's going to be played back in court in order to diagnose her mental illness and the necessity that she remain for the remainder of her life in the asylum that she's going to. Her co-defendant in Unit 55 is subject to that same treatment. She's going to a mental asylum, gang stalking with a relative, gang stalking with the government, gang stalking with the neighborhood, and gang stalking by residents. And this demon engages in impunity, which is a spirit, okay? But this demon is gang stalking with impunity while her co-defendant's criminal conduct with my peers, with the courts, with the every other neighborhood that I've been in is being documented. And then the demon begins like she's doing a tumble roll in the living room. Those are demons that are fearful of what I'm speaking about. That's what demons do. That's audible activity creation, though. But that's, again, directly contradicting the outward demeanor of being, oh, I don't care about what you're talking about. I'm emptying the trash. I don't care what you're talking about. I'm spraying my shoes, I don't care what you're talking about. I'm on the phone, and speaking to, giving voice to how the demons behave themselves. How they behave themselves shows the obsession, because everything they're doing is in that specific environment. It is maintenance of that specific environment. This is relevant too, as I've been elaborating. It's currently 7 as I touch my phone screen, the demon again arriving in the living room. Okay, that's speaking to the actual obsession with me and the mental illness of a demon-possessed gang stalker. That is monitoring, again, in a bathroom while your genitalia is exposed, while you're engaged in private activity, and relies on the co-defendants on her communication device, relies on the co-defendants at Woodside, who have, again, sacrificed their own futures and their own liberty with regard to demons like in Unit 55. And for what? This is, again, mental illness. Their condition with regard to being demon-possessed, and they can't even explain to you why they are gang stalking. And it's not going to be a matter of, do you think you're gang stalking? Do you know that you're gang stalking? Gang stalking is being proven by the pattern of conduct. You will never get the truth out of a lying, demon-possessed gang stalker. Okay, you surround Satan with facts. Satan can't deal with facts, and you prosecute with those facts. And the inability to have a coincidence amongst two different regions in two different states, for example, amongst two different communities, that's how you're going to surround with inevitable facts. And you're not going to ask the opinion of a demon-possessed pedophile, of a demon-possessed psychopath who does things like throw their body around because they're fearful of the words that are coming out of your mouth, documenting them. You're going to prosecute with the information, and a lying gang stalkers are going to be put in the appropriate facilities, period. Gang stalking is supposed to be maintained as a conspiracy, never spoken of, never capable of being proven. You're going to prosecute based on what is public knowledge, the specific environment and the behavior in that specific environment. And it stands out like a sore thumb, not only where the fake sun remains over one apartment building, but also where the elderly are engaging in what is the amplified noise. Nothing about their elderly conditions, their heavily medicated states, their assisted lifestyles is an explanation with regard to the ongoing noise that I've documented in this podcast. Okay, somebody over 55, are you bowling in your apartment or something? And everyone knows that I'm not making up the documentation. You've heard it and you've seen it on video. That's exactly what's underway while I'm documenting. This is somebody Tracy Banks is gang stalking for years, as I've shown in her vehicle, while I'm being gang stalked with the police in concert with her, while I'm being gang stalked with the public anywhere that I am in her presence. The P.O.C. is underway, and it's also very obvious we're a bunch of old people over 55 who would ordinarily be asleep if they were actually minding their business, where no bombs are sounding like they're detonating inside of the apartment building, outside of any old person complaining about it. That's where the entity is engaged in that P.O.C. And it's also uncharacteristic of how elderly people are in the environment where elderly people are remaining. Okay, it is the P.O.C. And this is, again, 7:29 a.m. where that ongoing maintenance of noise has remained the entire time while I'm documenting their sexual violence. This is what they're doing while they get excited and get frenzied and are under some sort of hollow victory where you're monitoring in a bathroom. Okay, this is an entity that's engaging in that, and it's entirely psychopathic. What you will remember is the entity that is engaging in this for a term of years. This is what you will also be mindful of, is this is where the specific environment remains, and this is where the entity is monitoring on a communication device through the ongoing amplified noise and understanding the significance of the pacing. The pacing is happening amongst engineered light. So the maintenance, the importance of that light activity, the importance of all manner of activity that's created when you are engaging in that P.O.C. It is currently 7:30 a.m. This is documentation of bathroom monitoring, and it's also documentation of what is the malice that is inherent to that pattern of conduct, which is sexually violent when it's happening in a bathroom. All right, the entity is doing so with regard to knowledge that is being documented and is gang stalking for the duration of the day, while the entity is engaged in federal stalking all day long. Walks in and out of the apartment with regard to the pattern of conduct remaining. Is there a reason why you're touching the pillow?
Because you got my good pillow.
What does that have to, this is a demon that's pacing in and out. and she's touching me, and I sleep on the same pillow every day. This is a demon that's monitoring. She walks to the front door, walks back, and touching the pillow is a means of pacing. Okay, this is again while engineered light is filling the apartment, as I've shown on video. But I want to be clear: this is the demon that is engaging in what is that P.O.C. and what she should do more often, instead of yelling at the top of her lungs, exhibiting severe mental illness, and yelling out things that are clearly false about my character and proven by facts and evidence about hers instead, monitoring me with a smile on her face and talking about things that are totally irrelevant. And she's talking about my pillow when she's walking back in and out of the apartment. But I want to be clear, it's a more quote unquote pleasant means of engaging in the elements of monitoring. That's all that was. She's doing it with a smile on her face, though. I want to be clear, this is the same these are the same elements, however. So that's when you're dealing with psychopaths, you're dealing with what is an unpredictable personality. However, you're talking about what is absolutely consistent, which is the elements and the environment. And the consistency of that environment is supernatural. The fact that you have a consistently supernatural environment is the prosecution for federal group stalking and monitoring. The only thing that is inconsistent is their mind states. They're imbalanced. They are entirely, Tracy Banks in particular, entirely engaging in what you hear right now. Oh, you have my good pillow. I've been sleeping on this pillow, and never at any other point is this pillow that I'm sleeping on right now a point of interest. It is with regard to walking toward the door and then walking back inside to touch the pillow and to get close to me, which is again pacing in and out. If you understand, I've captured the state of this apartment. So the couch is right adjacent to the front door. So she's opened the front door. She's walking out, and engineer light fills the apartment, as they already aware how the P.O.C. works. And then she's walking back inside and touching the pillow after you already walked past in order to touch the pillow. This is how somebody that's acted pertaining to showing some sort of interest in me, and also is totally disinterested in everything that I'm saying right now. She's not talking anything about, oh, you're crazy, nothing funny about the documentation, but it's funny on another night. It's entertaining while she calls the people of the state on another night. It's something that she is engaging in what is different reactions to based on, again, whatever personality the demon is displaying at that point in time. The totality of evidence is what you will understand with regard to what I've referenced. Reference the documentation on April 7th. I'm doing the exact same thing because she's doing the exact same thing. She's gang stalking me. And I'm documenting it. April 7th in particular, I wasn't specifically talking about that demon. I am insofar as what LAPD is doing in Los Angeles, and the evidence that's being removed off the internet is relevant to what's going on in Woodside Senior Apartments with this demon, Tracy Banks. But she was not the immediate topic. This demon that is hostile and very fearful of that engaged in what is a fit that is documented on the podcast on the night of April 7th, 2025, however. And now on that time, she wasn't interested about my pillow that I've been sleeping on that day as well. She wasn't acting as though she's oblivious and nonchalant about my documentation. She wasn't engaging in what is laughter and some sort of pleasantries while she was being documented by virtue of me documenting LA. I'm documenting her. I'm documenting Woodside. I'm documenting the people of the state. You have an entirely different behavior, a different personality. In other words, that evidence is what is going to be used with regard to recognizing the diagnosis for gang stalkers. This is somebody with multiple personalities. Those multiple personalities, I'm giving you context because you're understanding demonic activity. These are demons that Tracy Banks is under the control of. That's not a legal defense. It's material for diagnosing severe mental issues, mental instability. This is how you have someone targeting your own daughter. Okay, this is what she's doing also while she's talking about something as irrelevant, as random as the pillow that I'm on right now. And it's nothing other than the means of pacing in and out. Okay, I'm doing so in a manner that is also supposed to, in your mind, this is again a demon that's always focused on the way that things appear, which is what demons do. You appear to be gang stalking when your elderly neighbor is creating earthquake conduct above me in an environment where that P.O.C. is underway. You appear to be doing so when you are maintaining whatever demeanor you think is quote unquote normal, and that's supposed to rebut the existence of gang stalking. The entity is always engaging in what is an outward outward demeanor. The outward demeanor is literally irrelevant. You're getting past the illusion of demons. They're all going to prison. They're all focused on, and that's the shell, the veneer, okay, that you're getting beyond, because the demon possessed, the gang stalking government, they are relying on the veneer. It's literally the evidence that you can see in the environment. The fake sun is the veneer for the engineer light that's coating everything, where psychopaths are stalking. All they're doing is maintaining presence. They're pacing around. They're not going anywhere. And by they, you may see different faces. People who have different names, they're the same demonic entity maintaining presence. This is understanding demonic activity, okay? So that is the veneer of the environment. The veneer of the demons is whatever it is that they find to be the behavior of those that are supposed to falsely depict the character of the one who would claim that strangers are stalking them. They're doing it against somebody that is, I'm knee deep into years of documentation. It's not working against me. And for the entity to persist in that unpersuasive and unintelligent narrative, you're literally relying on superficiality and subjectivity to compete with logic, facts, evidence that is consistent, that is entirely illogical. This is an entity in every way that is unprepared for an actual prosecution, all right? Proving not only criminal conduct of an unprecedented level, but also demon possession, demonic activity. It's proving both at the same time. And demons rely on the illusion. Demons rely on you looking at how, oh, well, they're not acting like a stalker. Oh, they don't look like a stalker. Whatever it is in your mind that looks like and that behaves like. It's totally irrelevant with regard to gang stalking. It's demonic activity. It's entirely malicious. And with regard to the P.O.C. of public corruption, it is existing in plain sight. All right. And as I'm getting even to that, you can get down to these old people that are gang stalking inside of the units where the fake sun is present at 7:21 in the morning and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the same sidewalk. This is where the demon in Unit 55 never sleeps. She's gang stalked with amplified noise while she gets excited while my panties are down in the bathroom. And she follows into the living room where she's then engaging in what are tumble rolls. That's what the audible activity is reminiscent of, tumble rolls above my head. Not coincidentally, but intentionally, when I start talking about the fact that Tracy Banks' sexual activity is the proof of her obsession with me and her monitoring me right now, not her outward demeanor of talking about the pillow that I'm sleeping on, not acknowledging how I'm documenting her in real time, not her appearance of being nonchalant about everything that I'm stating while I'm documenting her every move, which is accomplishing monitoring me. That's not where you're prosecuting, and that's not what you're focused on. You will focus on it, though, with regard to understanding that demented mind state. That's the behavior of a psychopath. That's a psychopath that's focused on, I'm just going to act like I'm not concerned. I'm just going to act like this, and I'm just going to act like that. And that's all you have with regard to facts and evidence. That is not just long existing facts and evidence, consistent in nature. And the demons are relying on illusions. Okay, so this is understanding that P.O.C. That's speaking to the demons who are entirely defeated, not only spiritually, but they're defeated with regard to logic, legal reasoning, and with regard to facts that are under no circumstances in their favor. This is why you have the elderly engaging in tumble rolls at 7 o'clock in the morning. This is why you have sounds like bombs detonating in the bathroom at 6:50 in the morning. And it doesn't matter that it's relevant with regard to how uncharacteristic it is, but it's under all circumstances. Even if I was at an apartment building where you have people all ages at Alvarado Gardens, there's people younger than me, people the same age as me, people older than me, gang stalking the same. I'm just speaking to, these are a bunch of old folks who are gang stalking in the same exact manner. No old person that's walking around on a walker is engaging in tumble rolls in their apartment. That's not disproving the elements of monitoring. It's not disproving stalk with amplified noise. It's already a proven fact. And everyone has witnessed the heavy documentation of the mental health patient in unit number 55 and the history of evidence of the demon-possessed gang stalkers remaining in the apartment above, whose role is to maintain presence and amplified noise activity. Amplification is nothing other than that demonic feature of noise that's being created. When you're vacuuming, it's not disrupting your ability to sleep in the apartment underneath. It's not creating any it's not going to fill the apartment underneath when you're vacuuming. When they're walking up and down the stairs and I'm capturing the fake sun outside, they're not breaking and shattering and creating any earthquake conduct. And it's the same when they're walking around in their apartments. It's amplified noise, which is demonic. This is exposing to you demonic activity, the spiritual realm, which is in plain view. I'm prosecuting this demonic pattern of conduct, which is psychologically harmful, and it is unlawful with regard to the government that has no warrant or probable cause to stalk you in concert with the population, and has no basis under any circumstances to psychologically torture an American citizen, which is exactly what it's doing when it's engaged in the elements of monitoring with demons, mental health patients like Tracy Banks, like the sex offender in unit number 55, license 5WUB 715, who is at 7 o'clock in the morning engaging in tumble rolls. When I talk about Tracy Banks engaging in what is criminal acts in the courts, such as having anything even remotely close to any sort of power of attorney, criminal acts of defamation, falsely bearing false witness about my character, and doing it secretly, because I've never been a part of any sort of court hearings. They've done it secretly behind my back while I've been kidnapped by the entity that's been gang stalking at the outset. This is how the entity, when I'm speaking about that, this is when the elderly demon in Unit 55 engages in a tumble roll, which is activity creation, speaking to mentally ill people who also at the same time want to maintain an outward veneer, a superficial appearance of being nonchalant and not concerned whatsoever, in other words, about what I'm speaking about, which is another personality. Reference April 7th, documentation on the podcast, reference April 14th, and become acquainted with all the personalities of Tracy Banks. All the demons, okay, where the same exact elements of monitoring with the same exact co-defendants are underway. The same exact co-defendants. The demon that's doing a tumble roll right now, she's engaged in criminal defamation with this demon that is on another day yelling at the top of her lungs, not concerned about the pillow that she's happy that I'm sleeping on and entertained by. That's what she's focused on, not the bombastic and false lying craziness that I'm speaking about. Today it's not crazy. Today she's focused on my pillow. This is somebody, it's not, being a psychopath is not funny, clearly, because you're looking at the harms, the national security threat of a bunch of demons who are psychopaths targeting someone for no legitimate reason. Not that there's any legitimate reason to gang stalk someone, but it is entertaining to hear what is a psychopath that's fully focused on the appearance of the thing rather than the substance of the thing. You're going to prosecute for the substance of the thing. The appearance of the thing is prosecution for the malice that's inherent to the substance of the thing that is underway. The entity that lacks the ability to even go there intellectually, that's why they're going to prison for the rest of their life. That's the entity that is needed by Satan, a bunch of hollow zombies who do nothing other than their job. They pace around, they stalk with noise, they stalk in the engineer light, regardless of how harmful it is in their federal prosecutions, regardless of it. Now, what you can do is you can listen to all the evidence witnessing the multiple personalities of Tracy Banks. And what you will always see with me is a consistent, ongoing focus on documenting and legal analysis, because nothing's going to stop that. And what am I always documenting as well? The demons that you will always hear in the background. What is the demon doing in Unit 55? What is the Ontario Police doing in the background? What's the Ontario International Airport? All the amplified noise, all the methods of audible activity, everything that's happening in the environment. That's why I call it out, because they're monitoring all the evidence about them that they know is being captured, because they're engaging in surveillance on communication devices. They're still monitoring while they're being prosecuted at the same time. That's what's so fascinating about an elderly senior citizen engaging in a tumble roll ever, let alone at 7 o'clock in the morning. That's what the audible activity is speaking to, okay? And that is directly rebutting the superficial veneer of a nonchalant attitude. You're not, first of all, ignorant or disinterested. You're entirely focused on everything about me. The light activity directly rebuts the passive-aggressive, nonchalant demeanor. The engineer light directly rebuts the passive-aggressive, nonchalant demeanor. The tumble roll by your mentally ill neighbor that's monitoring me with you directly rebuts the passive-aggressive, nonchalant demeanor. The demons are always focused on the superficial, the illusion regarding nothing other than what is the pattern of conduct, the illusion that you are not the focus when everything about me is their obsession, which is entirely sick. And it's because they're demon possessed. Demon possession is a very real thing, very real problem, especially with regard to government conduct, public corruption. Okay, the demons in units 33 through 64, Linda Reyes, the employee in unit number 41 as all of the adults in that unit are gang stalking, and they've been gang stalking the entire time, just like Eric Spencer is in Oakland, California. He is acting with the same impunity when he's on Tracy Banks's device, and Tracy Banks, that again has a short memory span. And this is also crucial. This is somebody that she thinks one thing about herself, but she's actually not that at all. So in this podcast, when I'm reminding you about gang stalk with Eric Spencer, this is the one where she doesn't want you to remember, but all you have to do is, this is why you document, because you can play back what happened on April 7th, what happened on April 14th. You can play back what happened in 2020, 2021, 2022. She's been engaged in gang stalking via criminal defamation, harassment, threats, criminal summoning, etc. When I'm referencing Eric Spencer's going to prison, period. This is where she's careful to maintain a pleasant and cheerful demeanor while she's still threatening my life. While you're being friendly, engaging in the elements of monitoring, that's a threat. It's not changing or neutralizing a threat when you are smiling while gang stalking. In fact, it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing and highly psychopathic and malicious. But I just want to be clear, based on the nature of what it is that I discussed, this is what the demon is using to determine which personality is she going to show when I'm documenting the elements of monitoring that she is obsessively engaging in. Okay? And it doesn't change the elements, especially when her co-defendant is engaging in tumble rolls, gang stalking with her. Okay. I just want to make sure these are all the things that you're always cognizant of, all these details. When you are at the bare bones, it's always the bare bones analysis. What is underway? Is this gang stalking? It's already established as gang stalking, and logic dictates that you don't have the pattern of conduct, and somehow one day it's just going to rapidly stop, or excuse me, it's just going to abruptly stop. That's not actually the case, nor is that reasonable to suggest that that's the case. It's not. The gang stalking system is always underway, and so the evidence also proves that. The gang stalking pattern of conduct is underway at a senior citizen complex where old folks are at 6:50, 7 o'clock in the morning, not sleeping, engaging what is bombs detonating and tumble rolls above me, while all manner of evidence is being referred to in this podcast, where that superficial demeanor, that superficial veneer of what is old people, what does that have to do with the fact that you're gang stalking? Again, these are the illusions that the demons rely on, and it's informative, because you need to see old people gang stalking. Because clearly, as you see the police department engaging in terrorism, old people gang stalking, engaging in terrorism, violent sex offenders, and the fact that they're old as dirt is speaking to the decades in walking with Satan that they have, the decades in practicing wickedness that they have. That's not less threatening. It's giving you perspective. Christ is no respecter of persons, and this demon that's engaging in tumble rolls, she has been, in other words, reaping, in other words, what she is facing for a long time. She's old enough, and it is well beyond her time to be in a facility where she belongs. You want to engage in pacing, you want to engage in tumble rolls, you want to stalk somebody in a bathroom, you want to engage in what is threatening someone while they document your stalking conduct. Everything you're doing in your apartment is about another person. You belong in the mental asylum where you're going. That is, again, license 5WUB715. It is the same analysis with regard to the gang stalking, quote unquote, mother, Tracy Banks, who was gang stalking with that demon in 55 at the same time. Okay, doing so while I started this with regard to bathroom monitoring in the private space inside of the apartment is a private space when you're understanding prosecution, and the bathroom is a private space as well. Okay, because even when you're in a facilitating venue that is referred to as a public place, like being gang stalked at the library, for example, and I go into the bathroom, understand that the bathroom in that library is a private space where the entity is gang stalking. Surveillance, just like it's happening here at an apartment building, a complex, which is a facilitating venue. All the sex offenders that engaged in stalking in the path with amplified noise engaged in starting their day with being documented as sex offenders on yet another day. You will see the video showing you many of their faces and their license plate numbers and their apartment numbers. They're gang stalking and engaging with obsessively stalking me as a whole community in concert with the federal government, who also knows who they are and what they're doing on an ongoing obsessive basis. This is an entity that is engaging in proving themselves to be that which the evidence already shows them to be. Okay, so it is beyond a reasonable doubt, but this is, again, to not only prosecute and expose, it's to embarrass. Sex offenders need to be embarrassed and shamed. stalkers, gang stalkers that try to murder and kidnap and steal from people, they need to be exposed and embarrassed. They need to be. The mayor should be embarrassed about what he's engaging in the bathroom in Ontario, California, because it's all state action. There's never any sun anywhere over the Ontario City Hall off of B Street, where I've documented, by the way, being gang stalked by helicopter, airplanes, fake sun over my head at all hours of the day. While the entity is keeping that specific environment, Paul Leon has been a gang stalker for years. Paul Leon is being documented while I'm at Woodside, and elderly people are doing tumble rolls in the living room with regard to maintaining elements of monitoring where the government is engaging in surveillance at this apartment complex amongst the elderly, who also, by the way, need government assistance to pay their rent. They're losing that government assistance. They're losing their apartment homes. And those in units 33 through 64 are losing their freedom. They're losing their freedom. Okay. It is 7:51 a.m. where all of those facts remain relevant because you are always prosecuting and mindful of the totality of circumstances. The short span of memory, the immediacy of the demon possessed that engage in things like bathroom monitoring on yet another day, like a tumble roll in the middle of the living room, amongst and under the circumstances of the body of evidence. That's somebody that's only focused on the right now. When I'm talking about the fact that this demon is engaging in what is criminal acts in a court, engaging in anything against someone like myself, against anyone. I'm advocating on behalf of the ordinary target individual, and I'm under no circumstances stating impliedly or expressly that you need to have a law degree in order to be free from the trap of being criminally defamed by anyone, including your relatives, with a gang stalking court, because that's what all the courts in California are. They're engaged in the P.O.C. So anything that a court has engaged in, it is already suspect. I've never been a criminal, and there is certainly no evidence supporting any sort of mental illness. And the entity sought to secretly defame me in a criminal manner pursuant to the P.O.C. The fact that the entity did that is speaking to the acts of corruption, the criminal acts committed against me with this demon, Tracy Banks. While I speak of that, this is where the entity with a very, again, they're focused on the immediate, the right now. You engage in a tumble roll, which is activity creation at 7 o'clock in the morning. What is an elderly person doing that loud at this early hour? And also when I'm speaking about things that they want me to shut up about, that's activity creation. It's also harassment with the intent to obstruct justice. It's the same yada, 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 the same P.O.C. But you're understanding how the entity is focused on me while I'm documenting that activity with regard to everything that I'm stating. And then while I'm documenting and analyzing in real time, don't forget what these demons were doing in a court in this the facilitating venue of California that has no jurisdiction over me under any circumstances. Not only because I've never committed any crime, I've never committed anything where they have any probable cause to investigate me for any crime. And not only that, there is nothing where you have any sort of basis whatsoever other than the criminally defamatory acts of this entity that's gang stalking, that is, as a matter of hard evidence, engaged in what is collateral harms. Things such as having something like or analogous to or similar to a power of attorney over someone like myself, who you don't have to be an attorney or licensed or know the law under any circumstance. You don't have to have a college degree, in other words, in order to be free from the government criminally defaming you in the ways in which Tracy Banks in the state of California has, in ways that literally are illogical, unreasonable, and patently absurd. And necessarily did it as a whole secret aspect with regard to this P.O.C. What the federal government, the evidence that the federal government has against Tracy Banks, in addition to this body of evidence regarding the P.O.C., meaning everything that's happening with regard to trying to defame my character on paper in secret behind my back while gang stalking me the whole time, that's relevant to understanding the system, the public corruption that's underway, the gang stalkers that are engaging in this sort of conduct, the entity that engages in fraudulent things such as stealing your identity, targeting you as a whole state, acquiring property in your name, or doing things like getting loans in your name. I've never applied for a loan other than my financing my education, and that's clearly under my name. In my, I've financed my own education. This demon with a high school graduate never had the credit to do so, and has engaged in fraudulent criminal acts against me for my adult life. Okay. And so this is something that the entity shares in that, while simultaneously engaging in criminal acts of defamation. At the same time, you want to defame me, you want to gang stalk me, and you also want to steal my identity and seek to financially profit while you're targeting at. This is all relevant and happening at the same time. There's multiple angles to this case. While I am inside of the apartment, and demons that know exactly who I am and know exactly what it is that I'm doing on a 24-hour basis, which is an egregious sex offense committed not only by the demon in Unit 55, but she is an entity acting with the entire city, which is a statewide P.O.C., especially while I'm documenting the sun rising over me in Las Vegas, Nevada, at Courtyard by Marriott on Dean Martin Drive. This is in August of 2024. The specific environment is speaking to what is a readily identifiable pattern of conduct, where demons over 55 engage in tumble rolls because they want you to stop speaking of it. They're thinking that that's going to be a distraction. I'm going to engage in louder activity because I want you to stop talking about that. That's the mindset, the simpletons that are gang stalking. Okay. But nonetheless, you're legally analyzing that. That's analyzed. They do the same thing with light activity. The light activity gets more radical. The audible activity gets more impactful. The threat escalates. It goes from the gang stalking neighbor to the gang stalking police, who were monitoring the whole time. They just arrive in helicopter to heighten and punctuate that threat. There are a bunch of demons that are focused on you and stalking together, and you're going to prosecute that whole system. All right, literally to dismantle it, expose it and dismantle it. And you're going to embarrass everyone that's engaged in it. Because why would you be doing this in the first place to one person? Does not the city have more important resources to spend money on? Do you not have more important things for the employees of the neighborhood police department to be focused on? Clearly they don't. That's why the Ontario Police is being removed from existence altogether. But what the Ontario Police is documented as engaging in, including while the elderly are gang stalking me in this apartment, it's documentation about the police. Understand that. They're not just old weirdos. They're state actors. While I'm documenting that, this is a pattern of conduct that's shared amongst a plethora of police departments, including in other states like Nevada. Okay, the entity is gang stalking as you are looking at the evidence regarding the Fontana Police Department, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Montclair Police Department, the Chino Police Department, the San Bernardino Police Department, the Upland Police Department, the Arcadia Police Department, the Monrovia Police Department. I could go on and on with regard to the pattern of conduct that, again, the demons that are engaging in criminal defamation, the demons that are engaging in what is harassment, engaging in tumble rolls in the living room because they don't like what it is. They want me to stop speaking about. That's the purpose of engaging what is louder activity creation while I'm speaking about damning facts that remain facts that no one is forgetting. No one's forgetting that. It's just the fact that I'm referencing it, that the demon is bothered by it. And they're being bothered is proven by the activity creation. That's how I'm getting to these conclusions. How do you know that? It's based on the elements of monitoring. Everything that I'm doing is their focus. They're stalking. They're stalking with noise, stalking with light, stalking in their presence. That's how I'm able to understand that and articulate that in real time. Okay. So if you're listening to me, you're saying, well, how do you know? It's because the activity that's surrounding me, the activity is happening in an environment that is supernatural, that is speaking to what is even more than what is legally referred to as intent. That fake sun, that engineered light is there for that very purpose. Everything is creating activity. And all that activity is created pursuant to what is focused on what I'm doing and saying. And what I'm talking about is something that they don't want me talking about. I'm going to talk about it anyway. And I'm also going to legally analyze the significance of the activity that's being created while I'm talking about things that only they forgot about in the moment. Because the federal court that's prosecuting is not forgetting about any of it. These salient facts is what's going to be used to diagnose psychopaths. Okay? To put it broadly speaking, psychopaths that are engaging what is targeting people. I don't even know the demon in Unit 55, and I don't have to. And her pattern of conduct is already proven, and I can narrate her criminal activity in real time. All right. And this is within a pattern of conduct as I am in an entirely different region, and a citywide criminal effort to monitor and gang stalk me is also already on the record, speaking to the exact same P.O.C. That's an impossible coincidence for somebody to manufacture. It's impossible. This is the same entity that has engaged in criminal acts in the gang stalking courts in California. In other words, the P.O.C. is speaking to what is always suspect. Anything, any court claiming to have any sort of adjudication under my name, it's criminal conduct. It's criminal conduct. And it is fraudulently and maliciously acquired while that same state has been gang stalking me for years, which is proven. And then you're going to use their illusions such as a court, you engage in what is criminal conduct, corrupt acts against an American citizen who it is simultaneously targeting, and then engaging in what are acts of quote-unquote adjudication, acts of adjudication and any court in that state against that targeted individual. It is all suspect. It is subject to the irrebuttable presumption of public corruption, where federal group stalking and monitoring is underway. In other words, the entity that states that the reality is this because some court said that, it is not. That's not the case. Everybody is subject to investigation. Everyone is subject to that prosecution. And those that engage in such acts of adjudication, they're going to prison. Okay, they did so with regard in furtherance of committing murder. They did so in furtherance of criminal defamation in order to kidnap. And the entity that wants to kidnap and murder me also wants to engage in what is fraudulent acts against me, wants to steal my identity, steal property from me, etc. These are the things that Tracy Banks has also engaged in while she is still gang stalking to date. With the co-defendants that she relies on, she needs somebody on her communication device as a means of audible activity and activity creation. She needs her co-defendants inside of the apartment building to engage in things like tumble rolls. Tracy Banks is, again, she's over 60 years old. She can't engage in any tumble roll. Neither can any of her neighbors. That's audible activity creation pursuant to what is monitoring in that supernatural environment. Light that cascades inside of your apartment. That apartment is under being, the person that is the leaseholder for that apartment is a gang stalker. Okay. And this is, again, the entity that's engaging in that with impunity, with malice. All right. It is currently 8:01 a.m. and this podcast is initiating with what is the sexual violence at Tracy Banks gang stalking in a bathroom. And as the demons in the apartment building have already shown, Tracy Banks is a part of an entity that remains engaged in the elements of monitoring. While she walks in and out of the apartment, engineer light fills the apartment, which is a supernatural occurrence. Light doesn't fill on the inside when you're opening up the door. Light spreading and touching all manner of in the ways in which you've seen on video. That's not sunlight. That's engineered light. She's monitoring as she walks in and out. She's monitoring with her co-defendants as you're prosecuting the apartment complex, because that's what I'm doing. The apartment complex is obsessively consumed with maintaining those monitoring elements as well. But while the demon, Tracy Banks, exits the apartment and remains and that's in air quotes, physically absent as an individual. Individuals aren't gang stalking. An entity is gang stalking. The state remains present. Tracy Banks is being prosecuted for all the gang stalking, however, that she is inevitably responsible for and engaged in, not only as an entity, it's government action, but because she is a gang stalking mother. She is personally interested and enveloped within the pattern of conduct that I remain subject to. That's why she's going to a mental asylum. That's why Eric Spencer is going to federal prison. Gang stalking relatives, you're going to federal prison for that. And they do so with regard to an appetite for psychologically targeting myself. This is again, Eric Spencer, who's engaged in monitoring my genitalia. That's an incestuous sex offender. Why are you interested in your sister's genitalia? Why are you monitoring her? That's a spirit, first of all. That's a perverted spirit, but that's state action, and the entity is acting through your relatives who are engaging in sexual violence, entirely perverted and demented. Eric is a sex offender. He is a sex offender by virtue of his conduct. Okay, so I want to be clear. This is somebody that is engaging in what is a malicious endeavor to gang stalk. And then the ongoing gang stalking is always shared while Tracy Banks is outside of the apartment, where she doesn't have to be in the apartment. And the evidence proves that. I'm in her apartment where the pattern of conduct is underway. And she's being documented and prosecuted for gang stalking. When I'm in Los Angeles and I'm subject to the P.O.C, Tracy Banks is being prosecuted for federal group stalking and monitoring. When I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, I'm documenting federal group stalking and monitoring, and Tracy Banks is being prosecuted for federal group stalking and monitoring. And it's the same with regard to the state of California, including these old people that are engaging in tumble rolls at 7 o'clock in the morning, not sleeping, not being prosecuted, having no shelter from a federal prosecution, not being treated any differently than any other terrorist, while they're elderly terrorists, elderly age terrorists, and violent sex offenders. That's how your age is going to be used against you. And the fact that you're at this advanced point in life, that big, humongous, tall age, and you're engaging in something as despicable, as disgusting, as unheard of, as, and by unheard of, it's meaning unprecedented, as why is an, oh, you should be concerned about your edema socks or whatever it is you do regarding your health condition at this point in at this point in time. But they're gang stalking. They're gang stalking. And that's a proven fact at Woodside Senior Apartments. And it's a whole government operation. A whole government operation. No one's forgotten about all that heavy duty gang stalking by planes and helicopters. What they do with impunity on one day, and then the entity is the only one that forgot about it. But that's documented and it's published online. Nobody forgot about what you were doing in September 2024 at 10 o'clock at night. Nobody forgot that. Nobody forgot what you were doing when I am in the shower and you're engaging with stalking with activity creation. And I'm being terrorized by helicopter while this same psychopath is in the apartment, standing right next to me. While the entity is gang stalking via the government that uses helicopter because I took a shower, because I took my clothes off and got in the shower. Nobody forgot about that though. Only the demons themselves that are relying on this moment by moment existence. And you know why? It's because they're stalking every move that I make. And I am the leader, and the leader happens to be a federal prosecutor. So I am leading them into a federal prosecution, and it is inevitable. They have gone into that trap that I have led them into. And it is in that specific environment where you are looking at the abundance of evidence where demons are engaging in what is an unabated program of psychological torture, spiritually attacking someone in ways where their illusions are supposed to cause the demise of an American citizen. Now, taking these psychopaths out of their illusion and getting them the diagnoses and the prosecution that the law requires for any person that would be entitled to it, and using their intent to surround someone with illusions and understanding their criminal conduct with regard to prosecuting with facts and evidence, because it's directly relevant. And this necessity of all these illusions, you're going to get into the sick mind of those that are engaging in that, and they are the demon possessed. They are the demon possessed. But nonetheless, it is, again, like I stated, it's 8:07 a.m. That is a lengthy discussion regarding what is starting with bathroom monitoring. This isn't what an entity is doing on an ongoing basis. Every time I pull my panties down, every time I'm in the bathroom, this is an ongoing, unprecedented level of sexual violence committed by the government, who at the same time, there is existing legislation, laws, prosecuting for what are sex offenses. Stalking is a criminal act under existing state law. The state is a stalker. The state is stalking in places like bathrooms. And this is happening as I'm prosecuting it and documenting, exposing it in an apartment building. This is what they're doing when you are at the mall and you go into the bathroom. The entity is gang stalking in bathrooms. They're stalking in the sky space, helicopters and planes over the mall, the fake sun over the mall, pacing in and out of the bathroom, in the hallway around the bathroom, it's a whole elaborate operation with regard to the P.O.C. I'm only at Woodside, so you're always mindful of the elements of monitoring in the specific environment. This is what's happening when I'm at the Montclair Plaza Mall. This is what's happening when I am on the at the Courtyard by Marriott in Las Vegas, and using the bathroom that's in that lobby of that hotel. They're monitoring in the bathroom. This is, again, unheard of sexual violence. That's in violation, like if any other individual was stalking someone in a bathroom, that person's mindset would be at the forefront of their prosecution. Oh, well, this person is clearly disturbed. We've got hard evidence speaking to not only are they stalking, but the defendant seems to be interested in particular in stalking the plaintiff when he or she is physically indisposed in the bathroom. Now, that sort of sexually perverted obsession is one that needs to be assessed. That's something that needs to be relevant to their court mandated examinations, mental examinations. In other words, you're going to get help for your conduct that you engage in, which is a proven aspect of the pattern of conduct. Stalking in bathrooms, monitoring in bathrooms. This is what Paul Leon is engaged in and spending millions of dollars on. Millions. Paul Leon, while the demons over 55 are engaging in detonating bombs and tumble rolls in the apartment. These are a bunch of old people that are, again, in that specific environment, and no one is forgetful about the body of evidence. This sort of asinine operation that is entirely absent any actual logic or critical thinking skills Okay? Common sense is something that the entity seeks to target the ordinary target individual with, and they don't have any evidence to prove the fact that they are being quote unquote gang stalked. And not only that, you're being gang stalked, you're being violated in ways you're not even aware of. You're under surveillance in a bathroom. That's sick, and the state is in violation of its own laws. The state is a sex offender. The state is a stalker. The state is very much consumed with the expenditure of a tremendous amount of money to keep you under surveillance in that private space, while you are under the impression that you have a constitutional right to privacy, and you are never questioning your privacy outside of facts and circumstances which cause you to reasonably question it. But with regard to the P.O.C, you're understanding that we are all under surveillance. First of all, this supernatural environment surrounds you wherever you are in the United States, because the sun that's remaining over Woodside, like the hard evidence proves, for the duration of the day, that's first of all supernatural. Secondly, it is not coexisting with the sun being over any other state, any other place in the country, while it's remaining over one building in alignment to me all day long. And it has nothing to do with the also engineered lights, not even sunlight. You're breaking down the whole system. A bunch of illusions that demons rely on when they're engaging in surveillance. And it's government action. And the government action is exceedingly perverted, relying on unemployed elderly pedophiles and sex offenders, perverts. 6 o'clock in the morning, never taking a break from monitoring my genitalia. Okay? And this is, again, the handiwork of witches like Tracy Banks, who, through the body of evidence, the documentation shows multiple personalities, different reactions. When I'm doing the exact same thing, I'm going to document because I'm prosecuting. And I'm going to always maintain that same focused demeanor, period. I don't care if I'm documenting and prosecuting a gang stalker whose name I don't know, and all I have is a license plate, or if I know your whole government name. It doesn't change. That's how it is under the law, by the way. And it doesn't change with regard to identifying what is that demonic feature of that pattern of conduct. Demons are engaging in that, and Christ himself is no respecter of persons. It's not going to change. That doesn't change. And now the entity is being prosecuted. That's definitely not legally relevant. It's not going to change. One person is not treated differently under the law, especially not elderly people who are gang stalking. Okay, 8:12 a.m. the amplified booming noise is heard in the living room now, as opposed to being in the bathroom at 6:50 in the morning, like I documented. The amplified noise is occurring where it is that I'm located, and it's also legally relevant with regard to what it is that I'm doing when that amplified noise is occurring. The amplified noise is not merely some sort of anomaly or something that you overlook. The amplified noise is, first of all, harassment. It's pursuant to a pattern of conduct of monitoring inside of a private space, which is where the government has no warrant or probable cause to engage in monitoring, which is surveillance and stalking by the state. It is also happening. That's why you have the engineer light present. All manner of noise creation is accomplishing monitoring. This is how you're understanding the significance of having your kids outside of the apartment and having them running around and laughing and crying even, and playing about its activity creation. Those sex offenders in Unit 41, they're being prosecuted with their ongoing impunity that I'm documenting, while the co-defendants, which they are a part of, are monitoring the evidence of their sexual violence. That's not only a sex offender, a predator, but someone that continuously is stalking and monitoring, even as you report them to the government for that sexual violence. That level of a sexually violent threat is going to be prosecuted to the furthest extent of the law, while the entity that's monitoring is doing so with regard to also knowledge about the fact that you're being reported to the feds, that you're being prosecuted, that you're going to prison, and you're more obsessed with my genitalia than perhaps the fact that you should stop threatening and harassing somebody and monitoring them. And the entity is already doing so in an inevitable manner, because the ordinary unemployed gang stalker can't just up and move away. You're not avoiding prison. You're not avoiding a mental asylum, but the entity is doing more than that with the amplified noise creation, which is having a very specific purpose, and it's entirely unlawful. That's the purpose of having a fake sun over a bunch of demons at an apartment complex, because everything that they're doing is accomplishing monitoring. And again, relying on that superficial veneer. This is understanding what I was stating before, where you're recognizing psychopaths, not innocent, disinterested people who maintain a passive aggressive demeanor, a nonchalant attitude, while they are simultaneously gang stalking. That's a psychopath, not an innocent person. And evidence as opposed to some subjective observation of what somebody looks like or acts like, or who could possibly in your mind be engaged in something like gang stalking. That's not how you're prosecuting or investigating, and all that's entirely irrelevant. Okay, this is where the entity is engaging in that. So I want to make sure that this is, again, over 60 minutes of monitoring evidence, ongoing psychological torture. This is the same thing with the body of evidence in the WSA-the people documents. When I engage in documenting in text on my in that PDF, and as I begin typing documentation, the demon in Unit 55 begins the fit of pacing, and I have documented that for as the more that I type, the more that the demon begins pacing, and the more that I begin typing about the details regarding the mental illness inherent to that psychotic conduct, which is not coincidentally happening, and moreover in that specific environment, it is also happening when the entity then joins it, the entity joins in by helicopter, and this is how the entity is that the P.O.C. escalates with regard to that psychopathic pattern of conduct with regard to the documentation of that pattern of conduct, and then they engage in that. This is what the entity is doing while I'm capturing podcasts today. This has been documented for a prolonged period. The demons that are not only engaged in the P.O.C. of monitoring, they're engaged in the P.O.C. of obstruction of justice while you document them monitoring you. Okay, and this is 8:15 a.m. So we are at, I want to be clear, the demons maintaining tumble rolls, amplified booming, which is following from room to room. It was happening at 6:50 in the morning in the bathroom while my panties are down for a very specific purpose, knowing exactly my position, knowing what I'm doing. A sex offender, a predator, a pedophile like Tracy Banks is interested in doing that with the state, and then engages in that ongoing P.O.C. while I'm now documenting it. And again, it's at a senior citizen complex. It's in the specific environment. You have a bunch of old people who are going to be treated like the violent sex offenders and the terrorists that they are. Doing so, engaging, sharing with the government's criminal conduct, public corruption by a bunch of sex offenders who are obsessed, can't control their obsession with the genitalia that I have between my legs, which should not be a part of any intel that Paul Leon is maintaining, but he is. He is. Paul Leon is aware of not only every time I pull my panties down, Paul Leon is aware of every time I utter his name. That's why he's being removed from office, because that's a fact. And that's also unlawful. Okay, this is an entity that is gang stalking amongst the elderly population who are no less of a threat. That's what the gang stalkers, the sex offenders at Woodside Senior Apartments demonstrate. That is what the entity that is gang stalking as an apartment complex proves. Again, yet another venue where I'm speaking to the significance of that behavior in that environment. Now I'm capturing it on podcast. I've captured this dozens and dozens and dozens of times in all of the documents that are uploaded on the record with regard to prosecuting AVANATH, prosecuting the demons that are going to prison and mental asylums for their documented acts of impunity, not only documenting what it is the entity is subjecting while monitoring and psychologically torturing, but then what the demons resorted to as I sought to and began documenting it. And that is a matter of record as well, which nobody in no federal investigation, no federal court has forgotten. It's only the short-sighted stalkers, the demons themselves, who forget that and repeat it over and over and over again, which is how when they're stalking you and they're not looking behind at the long trail that they've left, then you're going to prosecute with that whole body of evidence. Okay, so I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's 8:18 on Friday, April 18th, 2025, and this is 1 hour and 25 minutes of monitoring evidence. So understand the significance, again, of the initial crime. It's criminal surveillance, and it's of a sexual nature. This is government action. The government's going to be prosecuted for maintaining a system of surveillance while I'm engaged in private activity inside of a private space. And doing it so in concert with the vicarious actor, the people of the state. And that's where AVANATH and AVANATH's employees and AVANATH's co-defendants, all the people of the state at the venue, are being prosecuted as well. And then there are the crime of monitoring the evidence. This is federal stalking, Title 18, Section 2261A, subsections 1 and 2. They're engaging in that pattern of conduct while monitoring the evidence in real time. This is, again, the government that is conducting itself as though it is immune with an unprecedented level of impunity. And that's also relevant with regard to understanding this impunity that the government acts with, which you prosecute for. It's a spirit. These are demons that are not only are they unintelligent, but this is a demonic spirit that is very hostile to authority. Okay, hostile to being reprimanded for what's wrong, hostile to being exposed as demons, being exposed as criminals, being exposed as the actual mentally ill. okay? Because they have a whole program of falsely depicting the character of the one that they're targeting. All right, and that's not happening here, not even remotely close. None of that is happening. You have a group of people that are going to be diagnosed and prosecuted. And those are the ones that are gang stalking over the age of 55, stalking with amplified noise, doing so in the specific environment for over an hour and 26 minutes as I'm documenting it. And that is federal stalking. This is also stalking violation of the Violence Against Women Act. This is also criminal acts of obstruction of justice, which is only enhancement to, again, you're going to prison and you're going to prison for even longer. Tracy Banks is not getting out of the mental asylum, but you have the defendants that are subject to what is being locked up in a mental asylum like the demon in 55 and just exacerbating that inevitable sentence. You are engaging in what is obstruction of justice, mindful of and aware of what it is that you're doing and continuously doing it with the intent to stop someone from enforcing their rights against you. When you're acting with the intent to psychologically torture that person and in furtherance of murder, that's why they're gang stalking they're trying to engage in what is a loss of life. It's very serious why the entity is gang stalking in the first place. All right. And you don't have any protection gang stalking and where you live. You are an obvious, open, vulnerable defendant gang stalking where you live. Okay. It doesn't get any more, foolish and unintelligent than that. But this is, again, an hour and 28 minutes of monitoring evidence, federal stalking, while the entity is monitoring the evidence against itself. This is relevant to what the federal government is aware of, is enabling. The federal government is under all circumstances compromised, having been engaged in targeting in the first place, having no legitimate right or authority to do so in the first place with the people of the state. All right. And then again, the federal government is engaged in what is quote unquote investigating and providing justice. But however, the federal government has unclean hands. That remains literally an inevitable and inescapable aspect of this pattern of conduct, entitling me to justice that I'm going to make sure that the entity is mindful of and will respect based on it being the terrorist in the first place. Okay, it is currently 8:21. This is documentation of all of the above, including criminal acts of obstruction of justice, which AVANATH is being prosecuted for. AVANATH engaging in over an hour and a half, we're at an hour and a half right now, of ongoing criminal interference with quiet enjoyment. AVANATH is being prosecuted for that. This is why you don't gang stalk with your residents and your employees. And your pockets are going to be drained, and damages are designed to punish and disincentivize, all right, and dismantle. You shouldn't exist as a company anyway. It's justice if your company can't survive by virtue of your reputation being ruined commercially, or by virtue of just not being able to exist anymore because you lost all your money in the damages that were awarded to the target individual. Regardless, it is justice, and nobody's crying for that sex offender. Companies are gang stalking. Companies are terrorists. Companies are sex offenders. Companies are engaged in psychological torture. This is what they're doing when they're under the fake sun delivering packages, pacing around, stalking with noise, stalking in the light, stalking with light activity in the same manner. And then the entity is engaging in the identical pattern of conduct. It's not changing. The only thing that changes is the face. It's just the face. Understand the nature of the group conduct. All right. It is the P.O.C. and AVANATH is being prosecuted while I'm documenting today an hour and a half of criminal interference of quiet enjoyment. AVANATH is engaged in what is sexually traumatizing monitoring tactics, bathroom monitoring. AVANATH Capital Management is doing that while engaging in federal stalking as well. And while it is being documented, that impunity, that is the coexisting maintenance of federal group stalking and monitoring while documentation is simultaneously underway, you're going to be prosecuted for that. The government that is being exposed for terrorizing any American citizen and still persists in terrorizing them is going to be prosecuted for that. All right, so it's currently 8:23 a.m. The demon in Unit 55 engaging in the tumble roll, stalked with amplified noise in the bathroom out into the living room. Now this is where the amplified noise centers, and the demon is doing so on a 24-hour basis, not as an individual, but as an entity. And all the sex offenders that surround are sharing in that. All of them, the demon in 56 with the 2 dogs, the demons in 52, one's on a walker, the other's in a male. He's always wearing a beanie and a jacket and glasses. Those 2, they're gang stalking. They're engaged in all the elements of monitoring. None of them individually nor collectively are creating earthquake activity inside of this apartment. They're all going to mental facilities, though. They're all going to federal facilities, though. This is gang stalking. And these are the consequences of gang stalking with the state as an apartment complex. They sought to do so, not anticipating that they were going to be caught, even though they know that the evidence was already on the record. The entity thought that they were going to overwhelm me. They thought that they were going to, quote unquote, beat me, and that they were going to, in the face of facts and evidence showing that that's not likely, this is not the same as what you've done before, the entity persisted, and the entity is going to serve the consequences for the decisions that it made. You're going to 55, 65, 75, you're going to prison. It doesn't matter how old you are. You're going to prison and you're going to a mental asylum, and every individual case is going to be prosecuted with regard to the facts that are included in this podcast today on April 18, 2025. The demons and all of the units that are subject to prison, over an hour and a half of psychological torture, harassing me and seeking to obstruct justice because I'm documenting them. And I am documenting them while they are sharing in the elements together, monitoring together, like they are at every other moment, every other time of the day. That's why the fake sun remains over this strip of sidewalk in front of Tracy Banks' apartment from the beginning to the end of the day while they share in the elements of monitoring. Okay, so understand that this is what an entity is doing on a ceaseless basis, and they're doing so, and they are going to prison, they are going to mental asylums, and they belong there. They belong there, not only for gang stalking, but for the psychopath that engages in more of that unlawful conduct as a reaction to your being pointed out, called out for conduct unbecoming, conduct unlawful, conduct perverted and satanic, and you resort to more violence. That is somebody that absolutely belongs in the prison and in the mental asylums where they're going. They absolutely belong there, and that's where they're going. 55, 35, 75 years old. That's where they're all going. Units 33 through 64. Linda Reyes's impunity is being documented as well, and every other employee of AVANATH Capital Management. And as always, every gang stalking immigrant is subject to deportation. So the entity, again, they like to play games. So anybody that's a gang stalker that knows that evidence is underway and they engage in chicanery, like moving around, shuffling around employees. Suddenly somebody that was an immigrant no longer works at the venue. The entity is going to be fully prosecuted comprehensively. You're not escaping it. If you were gang stalking at any point in time, which you were, the evidence, this is why you document. Okay. And all you have to do is refer to the record. It's very convenient once you have the foundation, you understand how the system works, and then you're merely executing that prosecution. You are going to be subject to deportation. It's quitting the job and going to work somewhere else because it's getting a little hot while the entity is still gang stalking. You remain a part of that. You're going to be deported. So like I said, in other words, there's no escaping that. And the entity, by the way, has no problem being documented engaging in gang stalking. And the federal government has no problem putting them in the appropriate facilities either. There's no problem with that. It's necessary for the public good, for the protection of American citizens who are subject to this pattern of conduct unbeknownst to them. Threats to their liberty, threats to their lives that they are not even aware of while this pattern of conduct is underway in this country. Okay, it is 8:27 a.m. on April 18, 2025. Tracy Banks' license plate is again 9HUZ740, engaging in bathroom monitoring with her co-defendant, sharing in the immediate elements of monitoring. The demons in unit number 55, 56, 52, 50, and what would be 54. Those are the apartments that are immediately on the what would be the east and the west of apartment 51 where I'm inside. But again, that has nothing to do with what is the amplified noise. None of them individually or collectively are creating that amplified noise. It's the maintenance of stalkers who, again, you're identifying them because you're going to document, because they're all subject to the pattern of conduct. The entire apartment building is. But these are the ones that are in the immediate environment who are engaging what is sharing presence around me while I'm in the bathroom, and the entity is stalking with amplified activity creation in that specific environment. This is where monitoring is underway, and this is understanding and appreciating what is that aspect of engaging in psychological torture, engaging what is sexually violent iterations of that same exact pattern of conduct, and doing so when you are already facing what is inevitable demise for public corruption, for the unprecedented crime of federal group stalking monitoring, and at multiple levels of government and into the civilian population. And doing so is again the hollow victory. What is the prize? you're going to be locked up. You're going to lose your apartment home. You're losing your government assistance. You're going to acquire a criminal record as a terrorist and a violent sex offender. This is, again, the things that demons literally prefer with regard to their demented mind state versus, again, a criminal prosecution for what they're engaging in against an American citizen who has a right to not be subject to it. Not in the bathroom, not in your home, not in someone else's home, not in public, not at any time, under any circumstances, by the state who has no warrant or probable cause or constitutional authority under any circumstances to engage in gang stalking, bathroom monitoring, psychological torture tactics for no legitimate reason whatsoever at that. Okay, this is understanding that. And so that's why you go to the extent, that's why you're listening to what is the evidence speaking to and expounding upon how the pattern of conduct is underway amongst the civilian population. And contrary to what they're referred to as, none of this is civilized. None of these are civilians. These are Neanderthals. These are, again, barbarians. These are animals. These are literally cockroaches of the human race. They're the demon possessed who are violent sex offenders, and they all have names and social security numbers. They have places of address where they are identifiable and reachable with regard to prosecuting them. And so this is, again, that entity that is doing so with regard to knowledge that it's being documented. It's 8:30 a.m. The entity, again, filling the apartment with amplified noise. An amplified booming is what is heard inside of the apartment while I am in the midst of documentation. So that is the entity that's still engaging what is harassment, still engaging what is monitoring the evidence, maintaining that noise level. Okay, so this is at 1 hour and 38 minutes, and this is, again, prosecuting AVANATH Capital Management, a corrupt third party that maintains multiple properties in California and in the country with regard to the threat that this AVANATH Capital Management poses to the American public, where it's gang stalking American citizens with the government, with its literally those that are residing on the grounds of its facilitating venues, as I'm exposing in the state of California. It's speaking to how you're going to prosecute that company and how you're going to prosecute this apartment complex and the state at large. But it is, again, 8:31 a.m. on April 8th, 18th, 2025. This is documentation of bathroom monitoring and also federal stalking, Title 18 federal stalking, and criminal acts of obstruction of justice, ongoing harassment, ongoing terrorism. Stalking with amplified noise is terrorism. Stalking with the amplified noise is how you're monitoring, and it's the pattern of conduct. I'm documenting it where I'm working, I'm documenting it. Where I live, I'm documenting it. In the hotels, I'm documenting it. Even when I'm sleeping outside, when I'm sleeping in a car, it doesn't matter where I'm at. It's the same exact pattern of conduct in that environment, okay? That specific environment. This is P.O.C. Again, license 5WB715 is the demon in unit number 55. And the demons that are gang stalking as an apartment complex are the focal point with regard to those that are maintaining as a place of residence the elements of monitoring on behalf of the state. And that's going to be published in video as well regarding bathroom monitoring today, as I am subject to it with regard to amplified noise. Even when the entity isn't surrounded with amplified noise in the bathroom, the elements of monitoring, you're under surveillance on a ceaseless basis. So to go to the extent to where you're hearing a loud boom in the bathroom, that's a sex offender that's just engaging with acting with all manner of impunity. And why would you want your sexual violence? Why do you want your face associated again with that's, again, the demons who are psychopaths, who are, again, their own demise. Okay, that's why you're going to the places that you're going. It is 8:33 a.m. This is ongoing monitoring of evidence as well. Criminal interference for 1 hour and 40 minutes. This is not different from what I've documented in the PDF documents entitled WSA-The People, where I am typing out the documentation on my device, and I am at the same time documenting what is the ongoing methods of pacing, amplified plane, a helicopter activity, whatever it is that the entity is engaging in at that time while they're monitoring my evidence. This is what I'm documenting for 1 hour and 40 minutes today. And it is the ongoing federal stalking conduct, which is also psychologically torturing while the entity is monitoring that evidence, harassing you while you're blowing the whistle, while you're reporting them to the feds, while you're documenting and enforcing your rights. Okay, this is P.O.C. It's 8:33 a.m. All right, it is still April 18, 2025. It's 11:22 p.m. And as the images demonstrate, this is giving ongoing Context regarding what the images and the videos and everything uploaded to the Google Drive, pursuant to the ceaseless pattern of conduct that the state of California is continuously engaging in while it is being documented for terrorism. And this is speaking to the prosecution of AVANATH as a sex offender, AVANATH co-defendants who are sex offenders, and AVANATH co-defendants who are gang stalking with the city of Ontario, who are doing so in a bathroom, as the documentation is including. And the pattern of conduct, just like I documented for over an hour and 40 minutes this morning, the elderly over 55, including the sex offender in unit number 55 and the sex offender Tracy Banks inside of this unit, who was monitoring with the demon that is over the same position over above me on the couch, where the ceiling is amplified sound of the ceiling crackling and popping, and that's impossible audible activity. It's amplification of what is a demon that's doing nothing other than crossing paths, pacing, doing pursuant to my physical movement, what it is that I'm doing. And what I was also doing was being physically indisposed in the bathroom, just like the sex offenders were doing this morning at 6:50 in the morning. Okay, this is again late at night, where old people are also not sleeping, engaging in what is 24-hour surveillance of a sexually predatory, perverted manner. And they're also sex offenders that engage in more sexual violence as their sexual offenses are being documented in order to diligently prosecute each and every one of them individually. This is all state action, and this is also criminal interference with quiet enjoyment, while the sex offender in Unit 55 is engaging what is amplified pacing, stomping, and it gets louder. And now the demon is repeatedly doing it because I began documenting pursuant to the P.O.C. It is currently, let me give you the time, 11:23 p.m. and this is criminal interference of quiet enjoyment that AVANATH is liable for, and this is also sexual violence that AVANATH is going to be prosecuted for. This is incestuous sexual violence that Tracy Banks is going to be prosecuted for, monitoring my genitalia with her sex offending co-defendants that are the people of the state. In units 33 through 64, they are going to prison and in mental asylums for this manner of sexual violence, which is unprecedented, and it's vicariously underway by the state. It is also that which is in conformity to a long existing pattern of conduct. As you are aware of what if you are not aware of what I published today, is that which is long existing regarding the Fontana Police Department gang stalking in concert with the Ontario Police Department, monitoring me in the bathroom at the Fontana Lewis Library, both en route to Fontana, back to the city of Ontario, where the entity never ceased that pattern of conduct. And that's exactly what's underway today as I remain inside of the apartment in Ontario at Woodside, where the entity is maintaining what you will also see uniform. The engineered light, which is impossible to occur under any circumstances, is both on the same east living room wall at 6:50 in the morning and also in the evening when I capture that image of the engineered light that's in the same position after 4 p.m. You'll also see that reflected on the same living room wall, where demons who are sex offenders gang stalking by residents, like the psychopath that is pacing with the psychopath that's inside of this apartment, Tracy Banks, are maintaining the criminal elements of monitoring pursuant to their appetite for sexual violence and psychological torture, which is sexually motivated. This is an entity that's engaging in what is, again, the elderly, creating what is amplified noises inside of an apartment building. That's called audible activity for gang stalking in the specific environment where engineer light remains. And it is in conformity to the documentation that I published today regarding October of 2021, where Fontana PD is gang stalking, just like Ontario PD is being documented for gang stalking right now, while elderly people are monitoring my genitalia in the bathroom on behalf of the city of Ontario, which the city of Ontario has been practicing for years. And that's why everyone in units 33 through 64 are indeed going to prison and mental asylums. These are long existing predators who belong in federal facilities for the safety of the public. They are representing a national security threat while gang stalking is being exposed and prosecuted and documented for study purposes, for educational purposes, for your information, to be aware, to not be ignorant about how, first of all, American citizens are very well subject to being targeted for purposes of murder, kidnapping, to defame your character, whatever benefit that a corrupt entity seeks to derive from the one whom they're targeting. It's demonic in nature, and the demon-possessed are obsessed with that target individual, and this is based on their demented condition. Their condition is also manifest while they engage in the pattern of conduct, such as pacing. Very peculiar as a person engages in pacing conduct. The pacing is pursuant to what is repeated crossing a path, which is what a demon-possessed person is doing in engineered light, monitoring someone else, monitoring another person with regard to detailed knowledge about everything that that person that they're monitoring is doing. This is occurring while my genitalia is exposed in the bathroom, while demons are following me around in an apartment building as I go from room to room. This is shared with the demons in unit number 52 in 50, 54, 55, and 56 who are in the immediate surrounding with regard to the same building. None of them are capable individually or collectively for any amplified booming or any cracking of the ceilings and walls. This is amplified noise, while all of them are stalkers who are also all being identified with regard to sharing in an environment where none of them are individually even capable of creating that method of or that manner of violation of privacy. And these are all 55 plus people. They don't even go to work. Many of them are going to state that they rely on medication, that they rely on some sort of income supplement, but yet they're gang stalking. And the amplified noise is directly speaking to why they're going to prison, not some sort of mental health or mental condition or physical condition, or the fact that you're over 55, that you're somehow exempt. You're not. In the same way that I'm documenting sexual violence, in the same way that I'm documenting criminal interference with quiet enjoyment, in the same way that I'm documenting impunity, in the same way that I'm documenting an unlawful threat with the intent to obstruct justice, they're all going to prison. These old people over 55 are exhibiting impunity, while the demon with license 5W 715, 5WB 715, and license 9HUZ 740, that's Tracy Banks, are sharing in the immediate engagement in the elements of monitoring. And they are engaging corporately as demons together, who are all sharing in impunity. And that's how you're going to prosecute any criminal conspiracy to target an American citizen. And you will not be exempt from federal prison because your gang stalking neighbor doesn't know how to sit down. Okay, it is currently 11:28 p.m. The entity is engaging in that P.O.C. and that's activity Christian, but the entity is engaging in that P.O.C. with the knowledge that they're being documented. So this is always coloring the conduct. All right, in addition to the fact that it's, again, 11:29 at night. The elderly are engaging in what is amplified noise. The noise is occurring where I'm located in the apartment. It's occurring while you are engaging in what is private activity, and then it's psychologically harmful as well, because the target individual is aware of the fact that not only are you being gang stalked by the state that follows you from Fontana to Ontario, California, city to city, with a citywide effort to gang stalk you, like I documented, which is published on YouTube regarding October 2021. But the entity is doing so while you're remaining inside of an apartment building. And this is what is harmful with regard to knowledge about that. Everything that you're doing in a bathroom is public knowledge. That's entirely perverted and demented. And this, to document it on more than one occasion, to document it on more than once, to ever experience it ever, is why the entity is being prosecuted to the degree that it is. This is state action that is speaking to impunity. The mayor, Paul Leon's impunity, is being noted, and he's going to be dealt with accordingly based on the ongoing criminal engagement in federal group stalking and monitoring. A mayor that expends on what is intelligence regarding the genitalia of a woman who was not interested under any circumstances in sharing what's going on with my genitalia in the bathroom at any place, the library in Ontario or the apartment that I'm inside of in Ontario. And it is directly tethered to what the mayor is engaging in, its public corruption. That's why the demon-possessed that are unemployed at Woodside are so heavily documented engaging in that pattern of conduct. Now, a psychopath engages in louder amplified noise. A psychopath engages in stalking amongst greater and more terrifying impossible light activity. And the entity does so with regard to greater frequency the more that you document. Those psychopaths make up the entire apartment complex, and they are going to be prosecuted accordingly. And this is exactly the tape that's going to be ran in court when the entity is pleading for mercy. But the entity under no circumstances demonstrated that justice calls for any sort of mercy, meaning you're getting as long as possible in prison. You're getting as long as possible in that mental asylum where you sought to psychologically torture and sexually traumatize and violate the privacy of an American citizen who you also knew was documenting it. This is federal stalking simultaneously. All right. Harassing and terrorizing a federal prosecutor is highly imprudent. And under the facts and circumstances, and at this juncture in your own case, because this is the case against the state is done. This is documentation that's speaking to supporting policies to prosecute, policies to change the ways in which there are government programs. There's ways in which monies are spent. Where the state is gang stalking, that should change. In other words, no gang stalker should be getting any government assistance to pay their rent. No gang stalker should be able to live in a community like they are now at Woodside, and they're gang stalking an occupant in an apartment complex. When you have an adequate criminal record speaking to the fact that you're a sex offender, that you're a terrorist, you won't be able to do that anymore. These are the things that are being advocated simultaneously while somebody over 55 thought that it was prudent at 11 o'clock at night. When you're supposed to be an old person, you're going to want to be in court and try to represent yourself as some old person, some old biddy that was just minding your business. And the evidence directly proves all of that beyond. None of that whatsoever under any circumstances could be the case, nor is it the case. But that's what they will claim. But again, remember, demons are nothing other than zombies. They don't think and reason. They don't exercise logic. All they do is pace. All they do is stalk with activity. They lack the ability, the capacity, and that's speaking to the threat, because that's the threat that will harm whoever, however, whenever, and will not think about consequences, engages in more rather than less when they face exposure, when they face consequences, inevitable ones even. That's the reality of the demon possessed. Okay, so it is currently 11:32 p.m. Tracy Banks coming out and stating whatever she's stating about something that is irrelevant. Is activity creation, just like she was talking about the pillow this morning, a friendly manner, and that's again being facetious, a friendly means of engaging in the elements of monitoring, and doing so with her psychopathic neighbor who was pacing above me in the living room at 11:30 at night. Okay, these are a bunch of old people who are never sleeping, by the way, and that's the documentation also demonstrates that. I don't have to make up anything, nor am I interested in fables and tales. The documentation speaks for itself, and this is prosecuting the pattern of conduct that's underway at an apartment complex, and everybody that lives at that apartment complex is gang stalking, and that is speaking for what justice requires. Being uprooted from that apartment complex and losing all the benefits that are inherent to being at an apartment complex like Woodside Senior Apartments, and never again benefiting from that. But everyone in units 33 through 64 are sharing in the criminal elements of monitoring with regard to prison and mental asylums because of their intolerable level of facilitation. They are physically surrounding me in the two buildings, and they are obsessively maintaining the elements of monitoring together. The entire apartment complex is, yes, it is a citywide effort. Okay, the state is gang stalking, but you are punishing those that are physically remaining with regard to locking hands. In other words, they lock hands around me and maintain obsessive presence and maintain ongoing obsessive activity. And then they engage in activity creation for purposes of harassment and terrorism because you're documenting pursuant to federal stalking conduct that they are also engaged in surveillance of the evidence against them. That's why they're going to prison in units 33 through 64. The fact that I have to document this at 11 o'clock at night is speaking to worthiness of federal prison. This is sexual violence by a government that must be punished with confinement. All right. The government's engagement in what is sexual violence is that which includes a whole population. This is, again, speaking to trauma that is long existing after damages are paid out, after people are sentenced. OK, that's an unfathomable and unprecedented level of violation of an American citizen, of any person, whether you're a woman or a male. Okay, and it is something that is entirely inhumane, and it is government action. And the government that's acting vicariously, they're going to prison and mental asylums for it, including the pacing demon in Unit 55, license 5WUB 715, who is again heading off what is the prosecution for all of her co-defendants, including the state of California, that's acting directly with such demons who are more obsessed with me than aware of the fact that she lacks any sort of ability to get anyone to legally represent her in a manner that's going to relieve her of the federal charges that she's never escaping. She's going to a mental asylum. And so is Tracy Banks, that's gang stalking with her. It is 11:35 a.m. This is documentation of bathroom monitoring. And this is AVANATH Capital Management's criminal engagement in that as well. This is P.O.C. I want to document, again, like I stated, I want to reiterate before I close off, the demon starts pacing louder and louder while I'm in the midst of documenting it. And I want to make sure that you run the tape back, because that's real-time monitoring of the evidence. That's ongoing criminal acts of obstruction. You're not going to harass the federal prosecutor or any federal court or judge when you're in court, and you're going to respect that ongoing investigation. The entity that fails to do so now, you're going to be subject to the very punishment that I'm telling you about now. So never mind the fact that the demons are delusional. That delusion is going to result in more years in prison, longer years in an asylum, period. And the entity is monitoring this evidence, harassing me while I'm documenting them. And that is through the demon in Unit 55. It is 11:36 p.m. This is P.O.C.